A massive explosion of energy strikes a remote location. Someone observes the huge crater, the glowing sword at its center. Then her voice speaks, asking something to Leon. The young man seems very tense about something, and the voice continues saying, "Do you believe you are worthy?" He watches attentively and worriedly, and thinks that for him, who always gave in to the irrational voice of fate. He extends his hand, which begins to interact with that energy, and thinks that this sacred sword appeared and said those words. Then the sword continues saying that opportunities must be granted fairly as the man grips the sword firmly. With an even more intense surge of energy, the object asks Leon if it is not right. As Leon is overwhelmed by the energy, he struggles through the process. A beautiful castle appears on a bright and lovely day while someone thinks about this world. Two training swords clash forcefully. While two young men exert themselves in battle, that same person thinks it's an extremely irrational world. As that blonde-haired person lands a strike and disarms his opponent, his wooden sword flies through the air and sticks into the ground nearby. Lying on the ground, Leon clutches his injured hand and says, "Damn it, take this seriously. Are you saying it's not even worth fighting me?" The other guy replies saying, "Of course not, and that there's not a single person in the Royal Academy who would fight him if it weren't for Leon." Quite irritated, the boy says that's because he keeps messing around with them just like he did now, and the guy says he was holding back. But compared to before, Leon has improved. Leon is slightly annoyed by that information. Then he gets up and picks up his sword again, attacking as if his life depended on it. He says that this condescending attitude is what he hates about him. Defending against the blows without any concern, someone says that Leon is amazing, and that the other Leon is no match for him, and that everyone was defeated in one strike. Someone asks if it's because they have the same name. Well, it's clear that our hero is struggling in that situation. Another says that although Leon is more handsome, both have the same spelling for their names. As a sword flies away, seemingly trying to reach the sun, someone says he lost again. Staying in the shade of a small wall, Leon rests from the fight. Catching his breath, he thinks it's been 3 years since Leon transferred there, and no matter how much he trains, he still can't surpass him. He thinks that even though they have the same name spelling, that boy is different from him in every way. His looks and personality came straight out of a fairy tale protagonist. He believes the story that he's a commoner must be a lie, and that he should have gone to the noble class, wondering if it's that fun to keep getting in his way. Suddenly, the blonde Leon shows up, extending his hand and asking if he's okay. And he just stands there smiling while Leon thinks that if only he were at least a jerk. Sighing knowing there's nothing else to do, he takes that hand of the smiling boy. Meanwhile, someone calls out to Leon. Our hero looks on slightly bothered. A person wearing high heels approaches, and slapping the boy's hand away, Leon tells him to back off. The blonde boy looks a bit confused while the girl tells Leon to wait. Annoyed, she says she heard everything and that he picked a fight with Leon again. She asks why he keeps fighting him if he knows he'll lose. The blonde Leon, a bit tense, tries to say something calling the girl Chloe, but she interrupts, noticing something. She grabs the boy's hand and asks if it's bleeding, saying she's going to take care of it and telling him to let her see. Pulling his hand back, our boy says it's fine, while she insists that they need to disinfect it first. Very irritated, he says it's none of her business and tells her not to worry about him. That leaves the girl a little surprised. Then the boy turns around and begins walking away, leaving the other two in silence. Sometime later, night begins to fall upon that vast academy. Nearby, the sound of blows can be heard. As Mike fully settles in, Leon is still there beating on that tree trunk. Frustrated, he strikes it while thinking that if only he were blonde or at least had some kind of family support, or if he at least had a master on the same level as that guy or noble blood, he wonders if anything would have been different. Landing a strong hit, his training sword snaps. He stands there, irritated, staring at what just happened, thinking that in the end, all he has is effort. But in that irrational world, there are many barriers that can't be overcome with effort alone. He reflects for a moment and realizes today is Leon's birthday, and that they must be throwing a grand party for the pride of the Royal Academy. He throws the remains of his sword aside, and collapsing under a tree, he wonders whether he should give it his all until tomorrow. He thinks he already spent 3 years of his life there, so it would just be one more day. Rolling onto his side, he holds his head, and deeply upset, he begins to cry, wondering why he even has to give up. And if everything is decided from the start, then what's the point of effort? He then sits beneath that massive moon and says, "Oh goddess, Shouting, he asks what the meaning is behind his effort and his life, and he just sits there, staring at the shining moon in the silence of the night. Embarrassed, he thinks there's no way she's going to answer. But not far off, a massive glow appears in the sky. Something enormous and very bright, almost like a meteor, appears. Elsewhere, someone asked about Leon, and the blonde one says he hasn't seen him. Chloe, a bit annoyed, says no one in the dorms saw him either, so she thought he had gone to the party. Thoughtfully, she wonders where he could have gone, and the blonde Leon says she's thinking about him again. Completely ignoring the boy, she grabs her skirts and says she's going to look for him now. An older man remarks that it seems Her Highness was rejected, and the boy tells Gilbert not to call them that even if they're alone. He explains that if someone had heard that, there'd have been no point in hiding his identity, and besides, he doesn't have the right to that title. Smiling, the man says that someone of royal blood is destined to shine even brighter in their trials, and he congratulates him on his 17th birthday. Just 1 year remains until the royal family's prophecy is fulfilled. He says that on the day a member of the Clyde Empire's royal family comes of age, the life of the overseer who supports the current emperor, fearful of the prophecy, will come to an end, and the citizens will witness the advent of Roderick, the former sacred king. Leon asks the old man if he means the great hero from 300 ago and says that the man's expectations are pretty high for him. Pensive, the man says it'll find out next year, but until then, Chloe, who has a special talent and is already learning 4th level magic, and Leon, a hardworking man whose mental strength surpasses anyone else's. He wishes to have both of them at his side, and the old man says prophecy. On the day a man who bears the name of a lion reaches adulthood, a sword that destroys evil will descend from the heavens. In the middle of that massive crater, a sword glows with power. Leon looks at it very tense, thinking it's a sword. Gazing at that beautiful weapon, he wonders if it fell from the sky. The weapon speaks to him, telling him to rise, leaving our hero a bit worried. Looking around nervously, he asks who's there, and the sword asks if it's not right in front of him. Confirming his suspicions, he looks tensely at the weapon. He thinks it's such a bizarre situation. This sword shines as brightly as the sun itself and speaks as if it were human. He wonders if it could be a holy sword, and out of nowhere the sword replies that's right, adding that Leon was the one who summoned it there. Startled, he asks if he really summoned it. The sword explains that just as he always believed, the world is unfair. While those who have everything are given even more, those who have nothing lose even the little they possess. However, there are opportunities that must be granted fairly, and those who don't put in the effort have no right to blame the irrationality of life. Only those who fiercely set their lives ablaze are worthy. Then the sword asks, "Are you Leon, who questioned the goddess of fate's irrationality, truly worthy?" Our hero closes his eyes to calm himself, then narrows them with focus. Finally, he answers yes. Beating his chest with his hand, full of determination, he says he is indeed worthy. The sword finally tells him that in that case, he must take her, and that she will give him the chance to prove his words. Our hero thinks he knows exactly what it means to wield a holy sword, but that he might be able to change everything with that weapon. Thinking of the man who helped him while he was on the ground, he reflects that his reality is truly unfair. Remembering the events from earlier that day, he still thinks, all the training he's done until now, never missing a single day. Resolve, he starts sliding down into the crater. As he gets closer to the sword, he senses its overwhelming power, and he says, concluding that all of this is unfair. That until now, he's been judged regardless of his effort. He worked hard to destroy the unjust reality he couldn't accept. He doesn't want to turn his determination and effort into worthless trash, and the weapon asks him why then is he standing before her. Leon replies that she asked him whether he was worthy or not, and he wants to prove his determination and effort, and that opportunity should be given in a fair manner. When our hero says, all right, then, the sword responds, good, and a massive surge of energy erupts behind him. As the sword glows, it says that he has proven his integrity, calling him a hero. Then shining brightly, it tells him to pull her out now. Leon asks if by hero, she means the one chosen by an oracle, and the sword says it has nothing to do with oracles. It is simply her will, that his powerful mindset, which will not bow to noble blood, family, or even fate itself, and his desire to prove his convictions instead of chasing gold or fame. He is like the one who fulfills all the conditions and is worthy of becoming a hero. She tells him now he must draw her, glowing even stronger, that this was the right he earned and also an opportunity that was granted fairly. Determined, he grips the sword. That weapon says her name is Elsid and that she is a clone of the Holy King Roderick Chaldea's El Vivar. She's also the sword that will guide the light of this era and tells her master, Leon, to destroy evil alongside her. Someone asks if they've been summoned and says that a holy sword and a commoner were starting to look promising. He questions whether she's asking him why he decided to break the prophecy and explains that the name Leon also means lion and isn't limited to the royal family. He says that the other Leon doesn't meet his standards. He has talent and destiny but lacks determination and he hasn't matured yet. And seeing how Elsa isn't complaining, he assumes she's starting to like Leon too, asking if that's it. He laughs and says things like that are rare these days. He tells her not to worry, that Leon will be even better than the last hero if he uses her inheritance, and it's time for those bastards to pay what they owe. He tells her to take a good look at the sky and asks if that isn't her job. Suddenly, our hero wakes up, apparently, in a different place. He realizes he's in his bed and wonders if all of that was just a dream. Still drooling, he sits up and looks to the side, and that beautiful sword is leaning against the wall. Trying to shake it off, he realizes it wasn't a dream, and the sword speaks to him, saying she'll repeat it, that it was the opportunity he received. Nervously, he looks at the weapon, which adds that he shouldn't think he'll become stronger just because he has her now. She says he'll face far tougher challenges than the opportunity she gave him, and that those with a great destiny must endure a life equally cruel or even worse, that he may have to sacrifice the woman he loves or the friends he trusts. She explains that he chose that thorny path on his own, so he could live a special life, while our hero repeats, thorny path. And he questions the sword, asking if it wasn't supposed to be an opportunity. That seems to catch the sword slightly off guard, but she closes her little sword eye and says very well, then tells him to prepare to go to the training room immediately. She asks him to show her how he handles a sword, as she needs to know his current level in order to teach him properly. Nervous, our hero hears her say that it's a test. Looking at the sky, the sword comments that it's still quite dark and the sun hasn't risen yet. Then Elsid asks why he's been so restless since early, and he says that even if it's morning, they're still at school, and that he stands out too much, leaving Elsid a bit incredulous. Leon adds that he has no idea what excuse to make up if someone ends up bumping into him. His master realizes that even in this form, it might still be a bit difficult, so he tells him not to worry, that he has a solution, and our hero asks, a solution? Out of nowhere, the sword begins to glow intensely in his hand, and in an instant, it turns into pure energy and settles into the back of Leon's hand. The boy looks at the spot and now sees a mark made by the sacred sword. Elsid says he did this so that Leon can now use his own hand as a sheath, and that it's visible only to him in this form, so he can instruct him at any time. Leon asks if that includes when he's asleep, and his master says that sometimes he sleeps but sometimes he doesn't. But either way, he can't do anything while Leon's asleep, and the boy says that in that case he could stand watch at night, but Elsa calls that blasphemy. Annoyed, the master tells him to cut the nonsense and just show what he's got. Then our hero says he'll probably be disappointed, but the sword says she won't be. Our hero is surprised by the unexpected response, and Elsid says that he did absolutely the best he could in the environment he was in, referring to all the effort the boy has made throughout his life. She asks what kind of master would blame a student for what they were never taught. That gives Leon a bit more determination. Then focusing, he prepares for the demonstration and delivers a powerful strike in front of him, following up with several blows filled with energy until he realizes there's something different. He's done these movements hundreds of thousands of times before, but continuing to strike, he thinks that powers flow into his hands only because someone trusted him. Then suddenly, Elsid tells him to stop, catching our surprise and tense hero off guard. A bit embarrassed, he asks what's wrong, saying he was just, but Elsid cuts him off and says his sword won't last like that. And suddenly, his sword shatters into several pieces, startling him. The remnants fall to the ground as something appears in front of him, and Elsid asks if he's been using it without even realizing. She explains that repetitive basic training is helpful in mastering it, but she didn't expect it to be possible for someone not using aura, and Leon asks what happened. However, Elsid says he doesn't need to know that right now and that his skills won't improve just by trusting in them without reason. She explains she'll teach him when he's matured and crouching down. He realizes there's no way to use that right now. Elsid says he trained the basics very well, and that she thinks teaching him how to move his body is enough. Leon asked about moving his body and if that isn't swordsmanship. Then she asks if he thinks he can wield a sword without using his hands, leaving the boy embarrassed. She explains that knowing how to move your body properly is the foundation of martial arts, and that although he trained his body well, this is on another level. She says she'll now test his physical capabilities and tells him to run. Leon asks for how long, and Elsid says until she tells him to stop. And she tells him to execute the movements as soon as she gives the order. He'll run on one leg and even do handstands. A little scared, he thinks he's confident in his running ability. But he's never run through the training field on one leg or while doing a handstand. And even if he has no idea what that's supposed to be for, if that makes him stronger evaluating the situation, that man says it's an incredible canvas, one worth painting. That he heard the East has an old saying that it's like Leon is a complete vessel, and it just needs to be filled to the brim. And even if he inherits only a part of the swordsmanship and experience of the former heroes, he'll at least be able to become a master swordsman. But after 300 years, he would never allow his successor to remain only at the level of a master, and that Leon should be able to defeat a dragon with ease. He thinks that he doesn't know how powerful the demon king of this era is, but maybe half of Leon's power will be enough. Then she says, Hey, why are you so surprised? I've already made up my mind, so take a good look. Well, for Leon, then we like the gates of hell opening. Back at the academy, Leon sleeps with his head resting on his hand. In a stern tone, Elsa calls out to the boy. He wakes up startled saying he's listening, and then he definitely didn't fall asleep. Then back in the classroom. With great effort, he thinks that he's doing his best to pay attention in class, but he used up a lot of strength on Elsid's test. And that aside from this class, missing a single one Elsid's teachings is crucial. Then the sword says she figured out where to start teaching him and asks from his point of view what he thinks he lacks. Leon says he thinks it might be swordsmanship or aura, but Elsid says he's wrong. She tells him that it's his eyes. Surprised, our hero asks, My eyes? Then she explains that there's an old proverb that says, eyes, feet, courage, strength. She explains that observation is the most important, followed by the feet, then courage. And while Leon watches in disbelief, the sword finishes by saying strength comes last. But, of course, that doesn't mean she doesn't care about it. It just means the others are more important. She says there are a few things she disagrees with, but the eyes are the most important, leaving our hero thoughtful, thinking about his eyes. He wonders if his vision would improve if he rolled his eyes around. He starts doing some weird movements, and Elsid says that now he'll learn how to see. That she'll show him how useless his eyes have been up until now. Liam is surprised and seems confused. On a beautiful day at the academy, that class continues torturing our hero. While he wonders how to see. Is that it? Elsid tells him to look forward, and our hero does just that. He says he's using the teacher in front of the blackboard as a focal point and that he should memorize it for just 10 seconds. So he tries to focus. He notices a dark blue blackboard, a middle-aged man with gray hair and green eyes among other details in the scene. Elsid says the time is up and tells him to close his eyes. Our hero obeys and closes his eyes with concentration, and the sword asks how many lines were written on the blackboard, leaving our hero crushed. Leon says she asked him to look at the teacher, but Elsid corrects him, saying she said he was the focal point, not to look only at him. He thinks he was just looking at the teacher and has no idea what was on the blackboard. Elsid asks if he doesn't remember and adds that she's sure the board was in his field of vision, but that he doesn't remember anything other than the teacher. And even after looking for 10 full seconds, she asks him why he doesn't remember anything about the board. Defeated, our hero says he doesn't know, but the sword says it's simple. She explains that it's because he tried to look only at what seemed important. She says that the eyes are far more wasted than he imagines, and that maybe it's to filter out unnecessary information, but most people don't use their full field of vision. She tells him to focus on his entire field of view and to memorize every shape reflected in his eyes as if it were a drawing. She tells him to relax his eyes, and that way he'll discover how to see more broadly. The next step will be to do that all the time, not just for 10 seconds. Our hero thinks he could say it's impossible, but he never expected the teachings to be easy, and he can't start complaining now. She tells him to look above the blackboard this time and that he has another 10 seconds. Leon says, all right. As he concentrates, it seems he draws the attention of others. The blonde Leon looks at him and calls his name a little concerned. Then the late afternoon arrives at the academy, and our hero looks more like a zombie than a future hero. He thinks his eyes and head feel like they're about to split in two, while Elsid says, all right, things are going great. She explains that the fatigue in his eyes is just from them being dry or because he's tensing them unnecessarily, but that, however, the headache he's feeling is different. Because of the attribute that had been dormant until now, the pain appeared from releasing what was frozen. She explains that it's no different than muscle pain, so Leon asks if she's saying it's like a muscle ache, and the sword says that's about right, which is probably a bit different since the brain doesn't feel pain. But he should think of it that way. And besides that, they'll continue training, suddenly getting excited and looking like a maniac. He says he understands. Elsid asks him to look at the chandelier up there and asks how many cannibals it has, and our hero guesses 2, but the sword says it's 3, calling him an idiot. She asks if the guy who passed by 3 seconds ago was wearing glasses or not, so Leon says yes, and the master continues, asking if he was wearing a tie. A moment later, she asks if the light in the 12th room to the left was on, and our hero says it was. Then she asks about the one above it, and Leon stammers, saying yes and no almost at the same time. They keep walking around the place until they reach a shelter. And they're finally in Leon's room, where he lets out a scream inside. Holding his hands over his eyes, he writhes in pain. Elsid says it was acceptable for a first day and thinks he can be praised for not asking to stop or rest. Liam asks if she would have let him rest if he had asked, and the sword says no. Our hero wonders how long it's been since he was pushed to his limits like this, and it's been a while since his mind felt this weak. That Elsid says that getting too comfortable can also mean he's stagnated, and that there's a limit to how far one can go just by repeating the same training. And even if there are advantages to repetitive training, it's a problem when the body finds an easy way to do it. Leon asks, "Find an easy way?" She explains that the body gets used to its own training method and that changing the method is absolutely necessary. Our hero asks if those running drills were for that reason, and the sword confirms that yes. And that it's because she needed him to become aware of the things he's not used to, and that makes the boy thoughtful. She explains that the way humans train and live their lives develops their bones, muscles, and nervous systems differently. Navigators develop a strong sense of balance, hunters develop directional sense, and nomads have exceptional vision. Leon thinks he understands that these trainings are meant to improve his strengths and compensate for his weaknesses, and that Elsa decided to start with that first. The sword says his strengths are the stamina built from continuous training, his mindset, and the fundamentals of swordsmanship from practicing basic movements, and the weakness is the rigidity caused by excessive repetition and a lack of mental and physical flexibility. Leon asks about aura and swordsmanship, but Elsid seems a little annoyed. She says that, in the end, swordsmanship is just how you wield a sword, and if he can apply fundamental movements and adapt them to situations, that already is swordsmanship. She explains that, of course, there are extremely powerful sword styles. But irritated, she slams her forehead against Leon's and asks who would teach something like that to someone with nothing but a promise of loyalty. And using his head a bit, our hero says she's right, while the sword watches him closely. She continues saying that when it comes to aura, there's not much to say for now, and asks if the other Liam defeated him using aura, and says that someone like him learning aura. That would raise suspicion among many people. So she'll teach him about aura once he leaves the academy, and that for now he should focus on mastering how to see. Then she asks if he doesn't want to beat that guy as soon as possible. Determined, Leon says, "Right, I'm getting super hyped." But the sword says that's not enough, and the boy asks, "What?" She asks if she hasn't already said it. He'll get used to repetitive training even if he focuses on it, recalling the nervous teacher who noticed a student watching him that way. She says he's bound to get bored with the same training method. Leon thinks he's getting a bad feeling about this. Stammering a bit, he asks Elsid what they're going to do then, and the sword says it's nothing major. She'll just give him a punishment every time he answers something wrong, to the point where he won't have any kind of leisure to get used to, and they'll start that tomorrow. Liam is filled with dread as he thinks. Punishment. Elsid says she's not bullying him for no reason. It's just a very effective method called operant conditioning. She says that although his mentality and willpower are useful, he still needs a push. Our hero stammers, saying even so, he thinks the sword is right, and that if he's going to get punished sooner or later, he might as well make up his mind and get started already. And with that, he'll be able to develop the corresponding resilience as well. Elsid asks if the boy really wants to go through with this, and he nods with a thumbs up, saying, "All right, bring it on." But the very next moment, he lets out a huge scream, suffering intensely. The sword asks if that was really only 5 seconds, while our hero collapses onto the bed, passed out. Elsid explains that since it was the first one, she couldn't calibrate it properly, and that she'll hold back and go easier next time. Smiling, she says that either way, she'll raise the intensity if he keeps making mistakes, and all he has to do is get it right, and everything will be fine. Excited, she says they'll give it their all tomorrow, while our hero lies fried on the floor, thinking that this damn sword is demonic. The sun rises over the academy, and our hero is already out there giving his all once again with that sword or maybe that spirit perched on his shoulder. During class, the teacher is visibly uncomfortable with the strange stares from one of the students. Back in his quarters, he trains hard, pushing his body to the limit. Outside, Elsa asks how many pigeons are on the dorm rooftop, and our hero answers 10. Then she asks which one would fly off first, and he says the 6. She asks how many pigeons are sitting on the open window, and Leon says there aren't any pigeons. There's a crow. Elsa says that wasn't bad at all, considering it's only been a month and it was really hard to spot the crow. But even so, he almost failed. Overly hopeful, Leon asks so. Then the sword says they'll stop here and rest and celebrating a lot. Our hero thinks that he'll finally get a break after an entire month. And the blonde Leon suddenly appears calling out to the boy, catching him off guard and leaving him flustered. There's a brief silence between them for a few seconds. Then he turns with a challenging look and says it's been a while, Leon. He thinks he hasn't seen him since starting his training with Elsa. But putting that aside, he figures it's been about half a month since he last talked to Chloe. The blonde boy says he's been training right after lunch, and that's pretty typical of him. He says he came by because he was a bit worried, but now he's relieved, and our hero asks, worried about what? He says that since it's been a month since he challenged him, he thought he had given up like everyone else. But as the judging by his face, he looks quite eager. Then Leon asks if it's that obvious. And the other boy says yes while smiling. He explains that the faces of people who think they can beat him are very different from his. Leon smiles, satisfied with that information, and says, yeah, good for you. So that's why you came looking for me during lunch. Then why don't you leave now that you've finished your business? The blonde boy says he's so cold and says it's been a while since they talk like this, asking why not talk a bit more. Provocatively, our hero asks what they even have to talk about. So the boy smiles and says 10 minutes would be enough. Leon scratches his head, unsure how to respond. In the end, he gives in and sits beside the boy. They sit in silence for a few seconds, just appreciating the view. Then the blonde Leon breaks the silence, saying he must have heard the rumor, the one claiming he's not a commoner. Finding it ironic, our Leon asks rumor and asked if there was really any need to bring that up, saying it didn't seem like he was trying to hide it and whether he should be speaking to him more formally. The boy says he didn't start the conversation because of that, and to think of what he's saying is coming from the Leon who hides his identity, not from his upperclassmen. Our hero is a bit surprised by his words, but relaxes and says, of course. And the other boy asks if he knows why he accepted the duels in the first place. Remembering those moments, our Leon says yes. And the boy wouldn't have been affected if he refused. He could have just avoided the duels without revealing his identity, and they kept going only out of his goodwill. Annoyed, he thinks this is nothing more than the generosity of a victor, and that compared to him, as long as Leon commits to this, suddenly the blonde boy says they should just end it already, catching our hero off guard and making him a little nervous. The incredulous boy asks if he really means end it, and the other says there was no need to keep dragging it out like this. He reinforces that the next duel should be the last, one fought with pure swordsmanship, no aura, and using real swords instead of wooden ones. Our hero feels impacted by the request and tries to process the idea little by little. With a challenging look, the blonde adds that if he wins the fight, the boy will become his subordinate. Anxious, the boy wonders if this is some sort of declaration to decide the hierarchy and says to the other boy that this is basically some kind of wager. He asks what guarantee there is for that promise, since it's not a magical contract but something verbal which could be broken at any time. The blonde agrees that if it were someone else, that would be the case. But the boy is an inflexible man who got here out of pride and will believe in his word. He also reinforces that the boy is the type who will keep a promise no matter the reason. Leon checks that the condition of the duel is that if he loses, he becomes the other's subordinate, and the boy confirms while Leon wants to say something more right after. Excited, he asks what happens if he defeats the blonde. It seems that thought really gives our hero renewed motivation. However, Leon doesn't even flinch at that possibility. He then says he'll give him whatever he wants as long as it doesn't endanger his honor or his family's, be it aura techniques, arcane swordsmanship, anything. Smiling, Leon says, alright, I'll decide on the day of the duel. Okay. As he walks away, the blonde tells him to let him know when he's ready, since the location will need preparation, so he needs to know 3 days in advance. Each of them walks off with resolve. That man says their moment has finally arrived. Leon, who is chosen by the whims of the sacred sword, and Leon, the prince trying to seize the throne, and that this is the moment when their true duel will begin. But something's wrong with our hero, he seems just a little nervous about all of this. Not understanding, the being asks what's going on. He questions whether the boy is nervous and afraid after coming so far since he was doing just fine a moment ago. Leon answers that it's not really like that, and then he honestly wants to know if he's gotten stronger. Elsid seems puzzled by that response. As he looks at his hand covered in marks, the boy says that even though the past month's training was really tough, anxiously, he adds that he doesn't feel like he's gotten stronger. The sword listens without responding, wearing a thoughtful expression. The talking weapon explains that even if the boy doesn't realize it, he's much stronger now, and because of that, he doesn't need to worry. Alisid adds that vision is a different kind of strength, which is why Liam can't sense it since he hasn't used it properly. But she says she's taken other measures besides that. Interrupting the conversation, the being asks if the boy has a physical assessment later, and the other agrees. He says to wait because something beyond imagination is about to happen and stretches his arm back. The being smiles, betting that the boy won't be able to back up what he just said. Slightly concerned, Leon doesn't know what to expect. A man tells several boys to form a line according to their numbers, and that anyone who isn't feeling well should step out while the rest begin to warm up. Visibly nervous, the boy remembers that in the last assessment he was the 9th to be called. Even though physical ability is evaluated without mana, the top rankings were filled with nobles, and taking that into account, 9th was the limit. Elsid asks about the other Leon's rank, and the boy replies that he's first. The sword says that makes sense since the blonde seems to have trained a lot, although not as much as our hero, and he's not even comparable to the spoiled brats from the other noble houses. Even though they're running a short distance race, it's 2 laps around the field, which should be 800 meters, and in that race, the other scored 1 minute and 20 seconds. Meanwhile, dark-haired Leon did it in 1 minute and 40 seconds, and because of those 20 seconds of difference, the other boy is unmatched. The sword, full of confidence, tells the boy not to be scared before trying. After all, the hero now has her as an ally. As the boy processes what he just heard, he says he'll put his trust in Elsid. The boy's prepared to run. The evaluator announces that the race begins as he waves the flag, and everyone starts with the goal of getting there as fast as possible. Someone clearly isn't playing around and gives it their all, leaving the others stunned. Even blonde Leon is one of the people left speechless. The boy dashes far ahead of everyone else. He pushes himself hard and stays in first place. The boy is running as fast as the famous blue hedgehog. A girl holding a stopwatch calls out to him. She announces that Leon finished the run in 1 minute and 29 seconds, and the boy gets super excited while his main rival looks a bit nervous. The evaluator approaches and asks if the boy has learned aura, to which he replies that he hasn't. The mana has to confirm that this power truly wasn't used. He grabs the boy's arm while seemingly reading his mana. Leon believes the man is searching for something by infusing mana into him and knows that if he did know how to use aura, it would be immediately dispelled during the test. In disbelief, the man realizes the hero hasn't learned it, but still can't believe he changed so much in just a few weeks and asks what kind of training he did. Shyly, the boy replies that he only trained the fundamentals since he had more breaks than before. The man reviews his documents thoughtfully, noting that the boy's training volume used to be abnormally high. He asks if the boy's body improved from the rest after so many years of work, but soon after dismisses the idea as nonsense while the others look aimed with envy. Blonde Leon also seems uncomfortable in some way with the situation. The hero quietly asks Elsid what might have happened. Casually, the sword says that things turned out just as he had said they would, and Leon nervously asks the sacred object to give him answers. However, before addressing that, she asks where he thinks strength comes from biologically speaking. As they watch Helmet full of energy with his papers, the young man replies, from the muscles. Elsid explains that in that world, most physical training methods focus on increasing muscle mass, but that's only half the journey. She also says that within the concept of the nervous system, muscles have neurons connected to them, and the strength they can exert depends on the development of those neurons. Strength doesn't depend solely on someone's physical appearance because of myoneral connections, and Lien, struggling to understand, thinks to himself that he's never heard of this before. Muscle density is decided by innate factors, and there's a limit to how big a muscle can get, something the boy had already reached through intense training. In conclusion, Elsid explains that she focused on developing the hero's nervous system, to which he replies that he kinda understood. Still confused, the boy asks how exactly the sword did that, saying he didn't undergo that kind of training and guessing something happened while he was asleep. The weapon reveals that it was part of the punishment inflicted on Leon, and he's completely stunned by the answer. For a moment, the boy returns to the private reality where only he can see and talk the magical object and goes silent while no one else understands his reaction. Because something dormant had been released, that's why his muscles hurt so much. And the pain he felt in every failed vision training session was part of the nervous system's development process. The hero asks why Elsa didn't explain that earlier, and the sword replies, because then you get more depressed. Liam makes a strange expression, hard to read. As he listens to the sword talk about how mastering vision was his way to escape the pain, the boy recalls a moment with a teacher. Then he remembers another moment with a student while reflecting on how hearing the reason for the punishment made him realize he needed to go through it. Elsa believes that if the hero hadn't gone through all that, he wouldn't have been so focused. And finally, she leaves a suggestion in the air for him to thank her. Sacred sword. I just did what was expected of me, and I feel great now that things are going so well. Liam wonders if the object doesn't resemble more a demonic sword. He also questions whether the sword really is fused with the soul and personality of the great hero Roderick, and if that meant Roderick was actually a villain, not a hero. As if snapping back to reality, the boy hears the other students cheering joyfully about something else. And there it is, as expected, blonde Leon broke his own record. The boy gives a triumphant look directed at the hero, and the hero responds to that look with clear irritation. The irritation is justified after all. The boy took second place and couldn't beat his main rival. It would be strange if he could surpass the other in just 1 month and shouldn't try to feel satisfied, but deep down, something still bothers him. Even so, Leon, who used to be ranked somewhere between 1st and 9th, has now climbed to 2nd place. Excited, he believes he can win, or rather that he will win. Back in the student dormitories that night, already ready to rest, the boy asks about the type of training they'll begin the next day, and Elsa responds that the vision training went beyond just practicing memorization. She says there's nothing more to be done regarding physical capacity, so it would be better to gain experience in applying what he learned, and the boy says it'll be hard in real battles. Because of that, the sword suggested they leave the academy. Leon eagerly asks, "You could teach me swordsmanship," but the sacred object already tries to dismiss that idea, saying it's just a dream. She explains that to learn swordsmanship, he needs to assimilate aura first, because doing that is more than enough to use the fundamentals up to a certain point. Martial arts without aura are nothing but cheap tricks. Even if called secret techniques, they're only hard to deal with the first time you see them. The hero would become easy to counter once his moves are read, and Elson also asks if he thinks the other Leon would fall for such mediocre tricks. Frustrated, the boy asks what he can do, and Elsa tells him to use his emotions. Recalling blonde Leon's victory and also of his own improved time, the sacred objects has a sword that's been trained with effort for a long time is powerful. Leon's physical capabilities have increased to a similar level, and now not even his main rival will be able to defeat him. After taking a deep breath, the sword adds a but. She says the boy needs real battle experience and asks if there's anyone who would start a fight with him. The boy cuts that train of thought off right away, saying there's no one like that at the academy. The next day, the hero was still thinking about the discussions with Elsa. Suddenly, someone asks the young man if he's the commoner named Leon. A group of boys watches him from the stairs. As he pays more attention to the group, the boy notices a badge on one of their uniforms and concludes they're from the noble class. Angrily, they question how a commoner got second place. Their certain young man used a trick that even fooled the instructor, but the three of them won't be fooled. Liam thinks to himself how amazing it is that jerks like this exist everywhere, and he speaks to the boys about their problem with the rankings. Our hero says the group should complain to the instructor if they're not satisfied with the rankings, and the trio, in disbelief, wonders how a guy like him dares to talk to them that way. The guys ask how they're supposed to know what kind of trick the boy used, especially since he didn't swear loyalty, and it was already suspicious for him to be in 9th place from the beginning. They believe the real him finally showed his face and ask which family is backing him. Leo notices they're not paying attention to what he's saying. The hero thinks they probably didn't even intend to talk in the first place, and that in their eyes, he's just an annoying weed they want to rip out. Another person appears behind the boys on the stairs. The newcomer tells them not to be upset and adds that even if the boy is a commoner, they're all students from the same academy. The audience that had gathered to hear all the taunting shows signs of admiration. Lord Elmont explains that they can call the punishment nobles impose dignity. After finishing his statement, he asks what the others think, and they agree with the man, saying it's what's expected from the pride of the Bourbon family. Elson asks if that's the leader of the group and if he belongs to a major family, and the hero answers that he's the second son of the Bourbon family. This guy was always second in the physical exam. He's probably irritated that Leon took his place. The behavior of nobles going after the weak and the weak retaliating against nobles is always the same, and Elman says it's a shame his first encounter with Leon is happening like this. The young man says the hero might feel wrong by this, but nobles can't just accept things quietly. He extends his hand and says, "I hope you accept our proposal." The boy replies that he wants to hear what the proposal is first. The other nobles react angrily to that response, but Lord Almud silences them with a gesture. Almud suggests they have a few matches under the supervision of an instructor. With a defiant look, Leon reflects that this is how things are going to be. The two young men share a calmer smile. It may seem like the noble made a generous offer by bringing in an instructor, but our hero knows he's at a clear disadvantage in this proposal. Since Amink didn't include a condition against using aura, that means he'll be using it to his advantage. He understands that if he raises an objection, the others will try to pressure him by saying he's deceiving the instructor, and he also knows that even if he refuses the duel, they'll obviously try to defame him in some other way. Leon turns his head to look at something. His eyes meet blonde Leon's in the middle of the crowd. The hero believes it would be possible for the other to get him out of that situation. Right after, the young man clenches his teeth. Thoughtful, the boy knows that relying on his rival's help would be nothing more than begging for aid, and imagining that it would be a humiliation even greater and harsher than the ongoing provocation, Leon accepts the duel. Raising his eyebrows, Elman shows mild surprise that the boy accepted his proposal. In return, the hero requests that Helmut supervise the fight, that it be one person per day, and that the other promise never to question his skills again if he wins. He then asks if the noble can accept the counteroffer. Leon suggests this because the Academy's demonic instructor can spot any trick, and coincidentally, upon being mentioned, the man feels his ear warm up. In the end, the Lord accepts his terms. Our boy doesn't care who will supervise the fight, but he thinks it's a shame he won't be able to beat them up until he's satisfied. Back in his dorm room, the boy says that Bastard had that look on his face, and that he never imagined he gained real battle experience that way. Elsid sees that, in terms of results, it's great. With some hesitation, Leon asks if the sword thinks he can beat him without using aura. It adds that he guesses not, since he's never fought someone who can use aura. The sacred object seems to have a brilliant idea and asks if she should show him how to make things easier. Not quite understanding the question, the boy replies with another, "What?" Very excited, Elsid snaps her fingers saying that this method should be easiest. And a terminal appears in front of our hero, displaying his name, his level -18, some skills, and a class that says he's a hero who still doesn't use aura. A bit surprised, he asks the sword what that is, to which she replies, "What else would it be? It's what you're capable of right now." Then she changes the screen and says, "These are the stats of that brat Elmont." She explains that she wrote it based on his standards, so it's not very objective. Surprise, our hero asks if that brat Elmont is really that weak. He says that if he's the second son of Count's family, he's probably consumed every kind of elixir and received all sorts of training to get stronger. Elsa explains that even if someone takes lots of elixirs, if they can't digest them, they'll turn out average, and his training likely doesn't compare to Leon's. She says people might think that without aura, he'd be like a rank E with only 99 points. However, she says that Leon can surpass that limit, referring to his heavy training and rapid development. Alcid adds that with her help and his own hard work, even without aura, he'd still be capable of facing those fools, and that leaves our hero a bit surprised. He asks if what she means is that he won't lose in terms of physical ability, and that in that case it's fine. It's just as Elsid said. The sword stands there blankly, waiting for him to reflect. While our hero thinks that from now on, he'll aim for the top, not below, that there's no way he'll lose to someone like Elmont looking determined and full of courage. But he questions why the terminal says his title is a hero who still can't use aura, and then Elsid says that if he doesn't like it, he should just get stronger. It was a beautiful day at one of the gates of the place. Our hero was walking down the corridors until someone suddenly calls out to him. And looking to the side, he sees the instructor watching him. The man says he seems to have changed a lot in a month and says that he would have stopped him if he were acting recklessly, but it seems he doesn't need to do that. Then he asks the boy if he isn't, and our hero replies that he's not sure what he's talking about. Smiling, the man says he's pretending not to know and tells him to do his best, though Leon still doesn't understand what's going on. Excited by the idea, Helmut tells him to teach those idiots a lesson and asks if our hero understood. And now Leon seems to have gotten the message. Entering that hall, we see it's already full of people. Right after, Leon walks in with a determined look. As soon as he enters, someone calls out to him. With a scowl on his face, the boy asks how he, a mere commoner, dares to make him wait and says he's acting like the rules don't apply to him. Ignoring all of that, he turns to the instructor and says he'll begin now, and the man says that's fine. The instructor then says that both of them will be putting their names and honor on the line in this match with him as a witness. Then he asks Jeff Heinrich what he wishes from this match. Furiously, he says he wants that commoner to admit his own crimes while our hero watches him with a serious look. Then Helmut asks what Leon wants from this match, and the boy explains that he wants this duel to be the last time he ever gets bothered by him. Clapping his hands, the man says all right. He orders both of them to take 2 steps forward and to stand in position. Claude and Leon watch the match thinking he's at a disadvantage for not being able to use aura, that even a wooden sword can cut if aura is being used. Ali Sid asks our hero if he wants to see the boy's stats, but he replies no, that it's fine. Because no matter how strong he is, he's still just Elmont's subordinate, and there's no reason to borrow Elsid's power for someone like that. But out of nowhere, the boy rushes into the arena. Screaming, he charges at our hero with his wooden sword. Leon thinks he's coming in with a diagonal slash from the upper right to the lower left, and thinks that since it's such an obvious move, he'll wait. That maybe it's actually a fake out. So he waits for the attack to come and watches the sword descending toward his head. Our hero wonders, this guy, why is he so slow? And with a swift counterattack, he dodges the boy's strike and hits him on the head. This greatly surprises the instructor, and it also scares the boy's friends. Even Chloe and blonde Leon are shocked by that move. Heinrich stands there frozen with a mark on his forehead, drooling and trembling slightly. A bit nervous, our hero looks back wondering what that boy's deal is. And to his complete surprise, he collapses to the ground like a tree trunk, while Leon wonders if it really ended that fast. Groaning in pain on the ground, the boy struggles to say you. Getting up the great difficulty, he tells the boy not to think he won with that lucky shot, that he just made a mistake. Then irritated, he says to go again, that you should fight him once more. The instructor says Jeff Heinrich lost and that he won't allow any unpleasant behavior, while our hero smiles and says, all right then. And that response surprises both the boy and Helmut. Laughing hard, Heinrich says that for a commoner, he sure knows his place. Excited, Leon says, fine. He won't go easy on him this time. Suddenly, Sword speaks to him and tells him not to end it in one strike this time. So while the two face each other, the instructor commands them to begin. Elsid says it's his first time using his vision in a real battle, considering that he volunteered to be his training partner, and that you should know ending it in one hit was just Leon being merciful. So our hero says, got it. Then the boy charges wildly at Leon with another exaggerated strike. Our hero blocks the attack with ease. Focusing, he applies the teachings on vision and realizes that the guy is so slow, he can see the movements of his arms, his legs, and even his pupils, thus predicting his next move. Elsid says that because he figured out his initial movements, Leon can tell what he'll do next. Heinrich keeps attacking. Our boy continues to defend skillfully. But this time, something different happens. He notices that the boy's wooden sword slices a bit of his hair. He then realizes that Heinrich started using aura, but even so, he can still read his movements. Screaming wildly, the boy tells him to try his best to dodge these attacks. Elsid says, to think he recklessly go on the offensive like this against someone who just beat him. He's an amateur, doesn't even know how to distribute his stamina throughout the fight. While defending, Leon thinks that even the enhancement of physical skills through aura has its limits. After the block, our hero seems to have noticed something. He realizes he found an opening and attacks without mercy, hitting the boy's leg. Clearly, he feels the strike becoming furious right after. Heinrich then jumps farther away, putting distance between himself and Leon. While holding his injured leg, he calls his opponent a fool and says he should have finished him off already. Yelling, he says Leon won't be able to bring him down with that kind of attack. But in the next moment, something seems wrong, and the boy is struck by a flurry of blows in quick succession. Elsid asks our hero what he thinks, and Leon replies that it's just as she said. If he wants to use vision during training, a moving target is best. Getting up again, Heinrich, desperate, says he gives up. Instructor Helmut announces that the winner is Leon, and the spectators cheer the result, except for Heinrich's buddies who are scared and a bit nervous. Later that night, people comment on whether they saw the duel between Leon and Elmont's clique. One guy says he didn't know Leon could fight that well. He started challenging each one of them beginning with Jeff, and they all lost, having to be sent to the infirmary after the fight. In the end, The only one left was Elmont, and someone questions whether Elmont would really lose him. Elsid says they were such easy opponents using a very elegant fencing style, but without soul. She says she can't believe they're at that level even while using aura, but our hero says he believes today will be different. And the sword says today it's Elma, and that it's important not to lower his guard. Our hero enters the arena and meets his opponent. Elma stands there seriously, waiting for Leon while emanating his aura. Elsid says it looks like the guy stopped being arrogant, and our boy agrees that it does seem that way. Leon thinks that Elmont, using his aura, is physically stronger than him, and there was something in the status window that the sword showed earlier. It said sword vision, but he thinks that since it's only level 1, it probably isn't very powerful. He believes unknown techniques are the scariest, and there's a chance he won't be able to see through it with his special vision. Appearing satisfied with the situation, Amin says he didn't expect his turn would actually come. With a calm expression, our hero replies, "Is that so?" and tells him he already knew this would happen, which really irritates the man. He thinks Leon will be the perfect sparring opponent to prepare for the duel with the other Leon. And even though he has great physical skills even without aura, he's weaker if aura is taken into account. Because if Elmont is at the level where he can imbue even his sword with aura, it'll be dangerous to try and block his attacks with a wooden sword. Order of that, Leon thinks that in this case, he wonders if he should avoid a direct fight and try to provoke him first while Helmet commands the match to begin. At that moment, an energy blast passes right by our hero's face, catching him completely off guard. A small cut appears on his cheek, and he wonders if that was sword energy. In the arena, Elmont points his aura-charged sword at our boy. Leon starts to think he might not be able to face him because the speed difference between them is enormous. His opponent gets into stance using his frightening aura. Our hero thinks that although he's a scumbag, he's still a direct descendant of a count's family. Smiling, the boy says it's no wonder the others lost. He says he would have trampled him if he were just an arrogant commoner, but it's a different story if he's someone worth recruiting. And that if he considers joining him right now, you can forget about the trivial feelings between them, but it seems like something is quickly approaching him. Dodging by a hair, our boy's sword brushes past his face. Once again, the opponents reposition in the arena, and a cut appears on Elmont's cheek. While he, irritated, says, "You." Now furious, he shouts that Leon is arrogant, and it's only because he picked up a few useless skills. Smiling, our hero asks, "Is that so?" And Elsid, offended, repeats, "Useless skills." Then she calls out to Leon, who replies, "Yes," asking if that little weakling just called her skill useless, didn't he? A bit startled, Leon calls out to Elsid. Elsid says people say even rivers and mountains change in 10 years, yet after 300 years, she's being mocked by a bedwetting brat. Leon senses that out of nowhere, threatening aura emerges. He asks if our hero can see the kid with the white teeth and stammering a bit. He replies that he can. He says that an insult a teacher can receive is to be scolded by a student, and if that boy's teeth stay intact until the end of this test, then he'll be punished for it. Our hero thinks that 1 or 2 teeth won't be enough, so he'll pull out as many as he can. Elman looks a bit surprised at Leon, asking what kind of vigor that is. With incredible agility, our hero launches himself and his opponent. He starts attacking the boy, who defends himself as best he can, is surprised by the strength of those blows. And in the stands, the people watching comment that is being pushed back, but blonde Leon says no. He says Leon is on the offensive, but hasn't been knocked out of the ring yet. In the arena, our hero thinks this sucks, that he's trying too hard, and if it weren't for his opponent's aura. In the stands, blonde Leon says that if things keep going like this, it'll turn into a battle of attrition. Full of rage, the opponent complains that the boy is persistent and that he should have stayed in the last inconvenient spot, lying on the ground. Ready to keep going, the boy replies that the other should look at who's talking. He prepares to compensate for his lack of strength and speed with Roderick's vision. His power allows him to anticipate the opponent's actions, and Leon believes that if he can see the attack just a little faster, he'll be able to make up for his disadvantage. He needs to read movements much more precisely, more quickly, and more broadly too, until something happens to the opponent in front of him. What madness! It's like they're fighting underwater. Our hero seems to block an attack, moving nearly at the speed of light, and positions himself in a mirrored stance to the other. Excited, the boy realizes his plan is working. Even angrier, Elmont curses at him, asking if he really can't use aura. The examiner still doesn't detect any aura from the hero, but still can't believe he managed to push his opponent back this far. Now that wicked smile, the other says he can't believe he's being forced to use something against the boy. Feeling quite uneasy, Leon becomes suspicious of what it could be. Element activates a power around his body and weapon, and the boy thinks it's arcane fencing. He's annoyed because his enemy can do all sorts of things with the sword, thrust, stab, and slash. Using his own power, the boy knows he can't waste a single second. The other young man approaches to strike, and Leon realizes he's going for a stab, and he can dodge it. Elman comes in full force, and our hero manages to evade. However, something else happens after the strike that the boy didn't expect. That attack was a feat. It's a technique that assumes the opponent will dodge. Werbin's secret technique that goes for a direct blow to the torso, and even if you try to dodge, it'll hit the ribs and you can't fight with broken ribs. Even being able to see the sword's path with his vision, he can't escape it. Leon thinks, I'm going to get hit and I'm going to lose. His eyes light up more intensely, and his hair stands on end, resembling a famous fighter, while he thinks urgently to himself, move. The boy seems to force himself so hard into the ground that part of his clothes rip with a kind of intense power, but that power was to jump over his opponent. Almont looks up, tense and in disbelief at what he's done. Meanwhile, from above, our hero strikes the boy hard, who clearly feels the blow. Leon lands behind the boy who stands there, stunned that he was hit. He glares at our hero visibly angry, and Selman comments that he only hit the left arm and wonders if, since it's one arm versus two, that wouldn't be a disadvantage for Elmont. Blonde Leon tells Chloe to forget the injured arm because he's sure the real danger is the shot from the Bourbon family's arcane fencing failing. Elmont thinks not yet, and that he'll gain the advantage for having both hands for a frontal strike. And when he does, the durability of the wooden sword will reach its limit because of his aura-powered attacks. So he decides to break Leon's sword to win. Charging our hero, he shouts that Leon has been dancing in his palm the whole time and calls him a commoner. And with an upward strike, Leon lands a direct hit, disarming the boy. Element seems to not really understand what just happened, but in the next moment, he takes a heavy blow to the mouth, spitting upward. With that powerful attack, his teeth fly in all directions. In the audience, everyone seems to celebrate the fight, and Chloe looks very happy for her friend. Then Helmut, quite satisfied, declares Leon the winner. A little later, Elcid says it was a great job by her disciple since he was defeated by a useless technique, and now he'll choose his words more carefully. Liam wonders if his character will improve after being defeated just once, and then it should be fine since they made an oath about the duel's winner. But Elcid says that instead, she was actually very surprised, leaving our hero confused. She explains that he just opened the door to acceleration and that he's progressing much faster than she expected. Not really understanding, Leon asks, acceleration? Picking up teeth from the floor, Helmut thinks that he definitely knocked out quite a few. Sometime later, our hero walks through the halls, massaging his shoulder. Meanwhile, he asks Elcid if acceleration was what he did when dodging Elmont's arcane fencing. She explains by asking if he knows that there are moments when the human body moves slower than the mind, and that, especially in a state of acceleration, a reflex can be faster than conscious thought, and it has nothing to do with actual speed. So in that case, she asks how Leon thinks trained swordsmen move so fast. Our hero replies that it's because they learn to use aura, and Alcid says he's only partially right, because if you don't use aura, your body won't be able to withstand its own power. So, normally, only a few people are able to learn acceleration after they've learned aura. But she says Leon used acceleration even before starting to use aura, and he only used it in his legs. Even if it was an incomplete execution, it was still very impressive. That means he instinctively surpassed his limits through sheer willpower. Smiling, our hero says, wait a minute. He asks if Elsa didn't say his body wouldn't handle the power, but that he feels perfectly fine and wonders if it's because the execution was incomplete. The sword says it's something like that, and if he had used it across his whole body, his insides would have been turned inside out. Leon, now worried, Elsa then says that it must be time and that he should take care of his body for now. So our hero asks what she's talking about. He questions, what time? And out of nowhere, he takes heavy damage from the side effect of acceleration. The sword says, what else? Of course, it's muscle pain. And she adds that he should be grateful he's only experiencing it after using acceleration and warns him not to use it again until he learns aura or else he'll die. Feeling the pain intensely, our hero says he knows that too. Another day there at the academy, our hero walks through the campus among the students. Some girls murmur something as he passes by, and everyone seems to be whispering things about Leon. Some say they heard he was experimented on and fed elixirs. Another says he hides his true identity as his secret weapon from the palace. Then he bumps into the group of friends he beat up, concluding that those guys must have spread plenty of rumors about him. Alicid says they'll show up with all kinds of excuses for having lost and questions the noble's pride. But Leon says that if they had any, they wouldn't have come to him. So the sword says that's a fair point, while our hero seems to spot something. And in front of him appears Chloe with a gentle look. Then the girl says, "Hi, Leon." A bit surprised, our hero says, "Chloe." Then sometime later, outside the building, smiling, he asks how she's doing and if she's not supposed to be in alchemy class right now, and asks if she's skipping class. Chloe calls him an idiot and asks why she would skip class. Then says the teacher was sick and there was no class, and asks if he really thinks she'd do that just to meet him. Then she goes silent and smiles. Leaning on a chair, she says something has changed and our hero is confused. Then she asks if he's been avoiding talking to her lately. And out of nowhere, he started fighting a bunch of nobles. She asks him if he has any idea how worried she and Leon were. This surprises our Leon. He lowers his head, thoughtful. And while getting scolded, he thinks about how much time has passed for him to be able to talk to her in such a comfortable and open way. Then he thinks, that's it. Now I think I understand how he felt about her. How jealous he was that Liam got to be by her side. He felt overwhelmed by his own inferiority complex, thinking he had nothing special. He thinks he hated this world where he wasn't rewarded for his hard work and blamed himself for it. He remembers when the sword appeared, when he faced it, saying that in that case, it would give him the chance to prove what he'd said. Chloe says that after those fights, his name is on everyone's lips at the school, and there are even rumors that he only improved because he randomly picked up a magic sword. Then the girl looks at him for a moment and our hero is crying. She's a bit surprised and tense about the situation, and she tries to soften it by asking why he's crying all of a sudden, saying those are just rumors, and that the part about the sword probably went too far. Leon explains that it's nothing like a magic sword. Chloe keeps looking at him worried. She thinks that even though Elsid speaks rudely and has a terrible personality, she picked him up when he was at rock bottom. Meanwhile, that man was eating a little cookie and said, "What, Leon, you little brat? I had already apologized since the mood seemed nice." Elsid wonders why he suddenly grew even just a little. Then Leon thinks that if a hero is someone who saves the world, then his hero is Elsid. So he decides that he'll become a hero just as capable as the wielder of the sacred sword and surpass Elsid's expectations. Chloe keeps looking at him without really understanding. That man says he doesn't quite get it. He was just talking to a girl and suddenly he's grown a bit more. He wonders if that's something someone who's been perfect since birth, should understand. And the sword says she doesn't care about the reason, but that now he finally seems worthy of being cultivated. And out of nowhere, our hero suddenly gets uncomfortable and covered in goosebumps, with his friend worriedly calling out to him. At night, in the students' quarters, our hero is lying down deep in thought. He thinks he really has changed. He remembers Chloe saying he seemed a lot better now, and that confused our hero. She explains that he no longer looks nervous and can look ahead. She says he looks like Leon, but there's a difference, like one person looking up and the other looking forward. Liam is surprised by what she says, that he thinks it would be nice if he could talk to Leon occasionally, that there's no one in his year who could be honest about their feelings and stand by his side. So he said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." Curl up in bed, he apologizes to Chloe. Apologizing, he thinks that he doesn't believe he can do it and that their next duel will be the last, and he thinks, in another place, blonde Leon watches the night. Thoughtful and reflecting, he says, "Leon." The next day, someone slams hard into a training dummy. Our hero is there and has just destroyed another wooden sword, while Elsid wonders if not even a perfect condition training sword can last. And that besides technique proficiency training, his style is so powerful that it puts too much strain on the sword, and a training sword is weaker than a real one. Leon says he pushed himself to succeed once because a person's trump card can only be shown once. And since it would be obvious he'd be countered by a genius like Leon if he kept using the same move, he thinks he'll overcome his techniques, read what he's thinking, and beat him. Elsid asks if seeing Leon's status window a few days ago irritated him that much. On the terminal, it said blonde Leon was level 25, had many skills, and was a swordsman with both talent and noble lineage. Exalted, he asks if an intermediate aura user can use an energy blade, and adds that blonde Leon can also use aura on his body, and that he's already stronger than the instructors at a level only the most talented knights reach by their 30s. Leon assesses the data and realizes that even though he loses in strength and agility, he has a bit more stamina, and that he's definitely a tough opponent. And getting fired up, he says he's not someone he can't beat. Elsid says that's a good mindset and says she'll give him as much advice as she can. That he should use that as a foundation to prepare to win his duel against the other Leon, and our hero looks excited about it. Then he calls for Elsid and says, Elsid, if and only if he loses against Leon, what does he plan to do after that? The sword is surprised, but says it won't answer that. Leon asks why, and he says it's a test for him, and asks if he didn't already say this at the beginning, that the trials he will endure will be harder than having opportunities. A bit uneasy, he asks if this isn't a bit too difficult for a first trial, and Elsid says this fight could become the turning point of his life. He adds that if he wins against Leon, then he'll explain everything, and that he'll understand why after hearing the explanation. The day goes on as our hero continues his intense training until the weather begins to turn and a heavy rain falls. Elsewhere, someone says the results are above expectations. A man says he knew the others weren't that bad, while the blonde Leon watches the rain at the window. But he didn't think he would defeat Elmont. Leon says to Sir Gilbert that it seems he acknowledges the results now and remembers him saying he wasn't so sure about his evaluations before. Smiling, the old man says that was 3 years ago, and for the right person, that's not a long time since he defeated the second son of a count's family. With a body that can't use aura, they can now conclude there's no reason to doubt his potential anymore. He mentions that he had a message from Leon today, and it said he's ready. Excited, the old man says finally, and then the young man says, Sir Gilbert, and Aggie would like to ask him for a favor, thinking he'll defeat Leon, and that he'll definitely make him his knight. And beyond that, he speaks while thinking of Chloe. The rain keeps pouring heavily on that academy. Our hero walks through the halls as a powerful lightning bolt strikes. A bit tense, he says it feels like someone in the heavens is preparing his battle, and Elsid says the hero is putting his future on the line. No surprise, the heavens are stirred. Helmut says that Leon arrived on time, and our hero notices that today it's quiet. Then the instructor explains that this was a request from Leon. It seems like he wants to focus on the fight, unlike the other matches that took place here. Elsid says that Brat Elmont wanted to humiliate him in public, while our hero nervously laughs. The man continues and says that since there's no audience, there will only be one observer besides the witness, and our hero asks who's going to watch. Satisfied, the sword says it understood, and our hero asks if Elsid knows who it is. Then he says it's probably Chloe, and that makes our hero even more nervous. Tense, he asks why it would be her. Then Elsid, please, says that Leon doesn't seem to understand what's going on. He says that since the blonde Leon thinks he likes her, he plans to use this fight to push the girl toward him. He explains that there are many cases where a king and his subordinate fight over a woman. Then he remembers Leon saying that if he wins this fight, the boy will become his subordinate. Our hero gets really irritated with that and thinks Leon. Our boy thinks about the one-on-one with Leon while remembering them sitting under a tree, and also remembers when they made the duel agreement, including the part where if he loses, he becomes his subordinate. So that's a good enough reason for Chloe to be an observer. He's drawing a clear line of who will lead and who will follow. He believes this is a truly meticulous plan that Leon would carry out, and, of course, this way of doing things disregards what he or Chloe feel. Our hero suspected this, but now he thinks Leon is really a high-class noble. Someone who tries to manipulate the relationships and emotions of others, and that this is a political technique that doesn't treat others as equals. Annoyed, he wonders if this is the path of a noble, and if it is, he's truly disgusted by it. Elsid looks at our boy and sees him clenching his fists. He comments that he's angry, and Liam confirms he is. He adds that he should have never done this, and that he's going to have to teach that fool a lesson. Already in the combat arena, the two boys face each other in front of their judge. Smiling, the blonde Leon says he's late, and with a determined look, our Leon says he's the one who's early. Looking back, he asks where the observer is and comments that he heard he called someone. Smiling, the man says he's in a place they can't see, and that it wouldn't be fair if he made a mistake because he was distracted, because that would just become an excuse as well. Smirking ironically, our hero asks if that's really the case. Excited, he says they should start right now then, but the blonde Leon interrupts and pulls out his small jar, taking a pill from inside. Suddenly, he swallows it. Confused, our hero asks what the hell he just ate. Then he explains that it's a pill that suppresses aura because even if he said he wouldn't use aura, it could activate automatically, and that would be bad. Leon looks a bit tense about that. The instructor hands a weapon to the boy who asks if they should begin then. The two opponents face each other ready to fight, and our hero thinks that he's completely serious, which is very different from his usual self. However, when it comes to focus, you won't lose either. Then Helmet gives the signal to start and the two swords clash in the arena. With Noble Leon attacking and our hero defending, he seems a little tense and nervous. Meanwhile, the other boy charges at him. Then he starts unleashing a series of quick strikes, which are also deflected by our hero. Our boy thinks he overestimated his own strength and that he won't last even 30 seconds if he keeps taking those attacks head-on. Then, without pause, the noble charges at him again with force. Still tense, our hero manages to block it. A bit frightened by the situation, he thinks the boy's sword feels like a whip. He realizes that Leon is on a completely different level compared to Elmont, and beyond that, there's something more. Leon thinks he's already using Roderick's vision, but the noble's image seems blurrier than any other opponent he's faced so far. He realizes he needs to calm down, and that the incomplete parts of that image will be compensated by the many times he's fought against him before while the boy continues his relentless assault. Gilbert, impressed, wonders if that's really a duel between students. Helmet, also impressed, thinks that even though they're not using aura, their level of fencing and combat might even surpass that of knights. Our hero thinks he's strong, truly a monster. While a noble Leon wonders when the boy became that strong, Gilbert keeps observing the fight, impressed by what he's seeing. Thinks he knows how much of a genius his lord is, but didn't expect Leon to keep up with him. The noble keeps attacking our hero nonstop, who believes that the attack is a double feat. There's something more to it. Straining his vision, he realizes he's read the figure and lunges at the boy at the same time he's being attacked. In the next moment, our boy has a cut in his armor right on the chest plate. But in shock, the noble Leon notices a lock of his own hair flying through the air, cut by his opponent's sword. Our hero gets into position to continue the fight while strands of blonde hair fall across the arena. The boy seems slightly irritated and checks his hair. He regains his breath in the arena. While thinking, he had been wondering why Leon's attacks after the first one weren't as powerful. Then, worried, the noble realizes that our hero had intended from the beginning to turn this into a battle of stamina. He observes him controlling his breathing. Then, in the next moment, he smiles while the blonde Leon questions whether he's fallen into his strategy. The two opponents stare each other down in the arena. Leon thinks he must get close to the enemy and drain his stamina, then slowly turn the tide to his side. This is a tactic that doesn't allow the slightest mistake. It's a strategy that has nothing fantastical about it. The noble thinks he can feel a will to win coming from him and that he needs to break that desire first, because if he can't do that, then he'll never be able to bend him to his will. The boy starts using one of his techniques while Gilbert at the table is surprised and thinking that he's using fast steps and that he's using an arcane technique from the Imperial family right there. Our hero, under the pressure of that moment, knows is a technique that uses the muscles and blood flow to allow the user to go beyond their physical limits. The noble thinks that even though it's not a complete technique since he can't use his aura, he believes even half that power should be enough. Our Liam puts in the effort too and had to raise his perception to the maximum as well. Then his opponent charges at him with a devastating attack, but our hero manages to repel it. The noble thinks it was too shallow and wonders if he actually dodged that. Holding his injured arm, he questions whether that was the quick-step technique and if he truly isn't using aura. Elsig whispers in his ear that he didn't use aura. Startled, our hero jumps in surprise. But calming down, he asks if that's serious, and the sword explains that the human body is stronger and faster than he thinks. And that even though there are body-strengthening techniques like quick steps, there are also ones that boost strength and endurance, so he shouldn't judge it. But in the next instant, his opponent is already upon him ready to attack. Annoyed, he shouts, asking how dare he get distracted and why he looks so calm. Sensing the attack, our hero says he could say the same and asks if he's only using arcane swordsmanship now. Liam thinks calm my ass and that he lost his rhythm due to Elsid's sudden interruption. He remembers Elsid saying not to try to judge what can be done using common sense just as he receives a cut on the cheek. And in the next moment, he thinks no, Elsid didn't interrupt him. Then he plants his feet firmly on the ground while his opponent is focused but seems tense. Leon realizes it's just 5 or 6 steps until he's out of the ring and that he's been pushing him all this time. At that moment, our hero appears more intimidating. Gilbert, who hasn't stopped being shocked, thinks the atmosphere has shifted, but there shouldn't be a way to break through Leon's level of quick steps. Our boy used to think there was only one way to win, and that was by enduring the attacks. In order to protect the small advantage he had in stamina, he waited for his opponent to get exhausted from using quick steps since what he had was acceleration. Smirking, he scoffs and says this isn't fun. The noble boy, tense, seems confused, so our hero tries to focus. He thinks the only thing he needs to trust is the strength he's been building up. That noble boy thinks it's the first time Leon seems so massive. Smiling excitedly, he says that's right and this is who he is. Thinking that he'll make him his subordinate no matter what it takes, and activates his quick-step technique once again. The man thinks that using that ability several times without aura should have already pushed him to his limit. Elsid seems to be enjoying the situation. Determined, the noble Leon thinks that if he's a real hero, then this much is nothing. Our hero recalls many moments they've been through and thinks, Leon, you don't know what the decisive difference between the two of them really is. That the boy who was born with natural talent, or himself who swings his sword every single day. Meanwhile, outside, the storm rages on, the violent lightning falling from the sky. Our hero charges forward with determination toward his opponent, who does the same in return. And with a powerful impact, a sword is shattered and sent flying through the air. Only for in the next second our hero to still be holding his sword intact, and the noble Leon in shock to realize that his own sword has been broken to pieces. That broken piece of sword bounces along the arena, and the boy looks at the shattered sword in his hand in disbelief, wondering how that was even possible. Elsid, satisfied, says the boy's hard work has paid off, and so he says yes. He explains that what decided the duel was the tip he picked up from Elmont's rising strike. That was an unconventional sword technique that disrupted the timing of the upper limbs. He says this while recalling the moment in the fight when he defeated the boy. Continuing, he says that the most important part is that the number of swords they've broken was different. Looking at him there on the ground devastated, he says that because the boy is so talented, his physical body can surpass its limits, but he himself knows the limits of a sword. And he adds that if they had been using real swords, the outcome might have been different. Then our hero approaches, pointing his sword at his defeated opponent. Smiling, he says, I won, Leon. Smiling and clapping, Gilbert says it's confirmed and that the victory goes to the boy. And Elsid said is that he also realizes something. If Leon had lost, he would have become the noble Leon's subordinate. Then he asked the boy what he requested in case the victory was his. He remembers the boy saying he would ensure whenever he desired as long as it didn't affect his reputation or his family's, and everything else was fair game. Satisfied, he thinks that come to think of it, there's nothing he truly needs. The boy says that after all, he lost, and since this fight was something he chose, he'll have to accept the consequences. He says a promise is a promise and asks what our hero wants. But Leon just smiles while looking at him. And without caring much, he says he'll tell him later, leaving the noble surprised. Then he explains that he doesn't have anything in mind right now and will let him know once he thinks of something, asking if that's okay. The boy and Gilbert seem a bit incredulous and surprised. But smiling, he says it's fine. Feeling a bit of pain, our hero says he finished the fight without using acceleration, but still feels like he pushed himself too hard since his opponent was Leon. Out of nowhere, a voice says, "Oh, light of healing. Please grant rest to the wounded." And Chloe appears using her healing magic on her hero. Excited, Leon says he already feels lighter, and that this is exactly what he expected from a rank 4 healing spell, so he thanks her for being the observer. The girl looks a little upset, and crying emotionally, she says she just can't understand him or Leon and asks so if he lost. Leaving our hero a bit intimidated, wiping her tears, she says he's gotten so much stronger. Then she asks if he's planning to leave the academy, catching our hero by surprise, and he asked how she found out about that. Chloe says she knows him like the back of her hand and that he's such a fool. Leon looks at peace and happy, but he says he thought she would try to stop him and irritated. She says she can't believe he geared to say that when he wasn't even planning to listen to her. She says he's always been like that, always pushing past the limits people thought were impossible, and in the end, he always pulled it off. And even though it took a bit longer this time, Leon says he thinks it was pretty fast considering how difficult it was. But Chloe insists he took a long time, way too long. She seems thoughtful while our hero laughs at the situation, and then the two of them start laughing uncontrollably. He says he's fine for now, and that she should go beat up Leon for him, while the girl asks if she's not supposed to heal him. He says that stubborn guy might not show it, but he's probably really depressed and shocked. So an attack from his girlfriend to hears would turn this loss into nourishment for his future growth, and with that, he'll leave Leon in her hands. Chloe's left speechless watching her friend walk away, and suddenly she shouts his name, asking what he'll do after leaving the academy. Waving goodbye, he says that for now it's still a secret. The girl looks a bit surprised at his response, then puts her hands together and seems to pray for a friend. Sid says he never thought he'd see a mage who doesn't believe in gods praying for someone, and our hero says that she really is a good person. The sword asks if he's finished everything, and the boy confirms that, yes, he has. He says he thinks he longed to become someone special, and Sid questions, someone special? He gave his all desperately in everything he did. He wanted to become someone who wouldn't lose to either of the two, that he wasn't able to overcome barriers like social status or talent, and in the end, lost his way in front of those special people, thinking he wasn't good enough. But upon meeting Sid, many things in his life changed for the better. He freed him from the inferiority complex buried deep in his heart and allowed him to escape the shadow of those two. But now the time has come to become a hero, and who in this world could be more special than him? Sid observes the boy and says he's quite a materialistic person. Leon asked if he's a bit disappointed, and the sword says of course not. Because what's wrong with wanting wealth and honors? What's wrong with wanting to be famous? He explains that ambitions are a central part of human life and having dreams that push them forward. And unless one goes down the wrong path, ambitions are what make humans human, and that's why he chose him. The person who was supposed to become the hero wasn't him, but the other guy, the other Leon. Surprise, our hero asks, what? Sid reveals that he is the legitimate son of the imperial family, Clyde, the sword that will rebuild the corrupted empire once again. And his full name is Leon Callum Gladius von Clyde, and he was designated as the hero from 150 years ago. These new revelations leave Leon in shock. Then he comments that that guy is the perfect protagonist and thinks that based on what he said, if he was supposed to be the protagonist, he no longer is, wondering if that's true. Leon says right and asks if he didn't say that fight would be a test for him, and Sid says yes and that he did well. And there's no rule saying a hero has to be someone chosen by prophecies or oracles. If someone's future is forged by their own strength and willpower, that's also what a hero does, and the other Leon is wrong about that part. Our Leon reflects on this, and Sid asks if he's feeling guilty for having stolen his opportunity or something like that, but the boy says of course not. It's not like Leon lacks anything compared to himself. So why would he feel guilty for someone born with a silver spoon in his mouth? That's impossible. The sword seems a little surprised by that answer. Then Leon says it's his own fault for losing to someone like him, someone who has nothing while he had everything he needed, leaving Sid even more surprised. He adds that it was he who was chosen by the soul of the great Roderick, and the sacred sword chose him. So if that's the case, he's just living up to expectations. Finally, Sid lets out a satisfied sigh. The next day, our hero requested to leave the academy. His instructor was very sad that he was abandoning the academy to become an adventurer, and said he would write him a letter of recommendation. And that, as a bonus, the fight between him and Elmont's clique had inspired both commoners and nobles to work hard, and that had changed the academy. Now finally with that, he probably won't have to return to the academy again. Very excited about the changes, he says, let's go to the free city of Blaine where adventurers gather. A beautiful eagle seems to be watching something. That eagle flies over a green forest and through the blue skies beneath a beautiful clear day. Running like a madman, our hero purses out from a bush. Stopping to rest and catch his breath, he says he's finally free from that maddening forest, collapsing to his knees in relief from his despair. Excited, he notices he can see the city of Blaine from there, and that he'll finally be able to sleep in a bed after having left the academy 15 days ago. Sid questions what he means by maddening forest and says he should be grateful became a training ground for him. Sarcastically, he says he's so grateful he's almost crying to be leaving it. For 15 days they've been in that forest on their way to Blaine. He camped in a forest for the first time. Goblins attacked him fairly often, and in those less than favorable conditions, Sid allowed him to use the sacred sword instead of the wooden one, which he had prepared before leaving the academy. Our hero faced and overcame the challenges and used the 15 days he spent in the forest to get used to wielding the sacred sword and training with it. Sid says he took a week longer than expected. Mayhem thanks him for the training and says those goblins have been giving him trouble since the start, and Sid asks if he managed to defeat 10 of them in under 10 seconds. And that even if he did manage to do that, was all thanks to the footwork training he received. Leon thinks he's definitely stronger than when he entered the forest, and that if it's up to what he wants, he would like to wipe out all the monsters from now on, and the sword comments that he seems very fired up about that, but that he should save that for when the time is right, which makes our hero curious. He explains that the boy is still a jar in the making and becoming stronger by slaying monsters will fill the jar. No matter how much he tries to fill a jar that isn't finished, he'll end up leaking and his effort will be wasted. Leon says he understands and will remember that. A good while later, nearing the city walls, we see that beautiful city from above. At the entrance gate, our hero passes by 2 guards. He walks through the city among streets and market stalls. Leon says he's glad he managed to get through the gate safely, and that the public seems to have a lot of trust in the Academy student ID. Then Elsid says, by the way, this city. He adds that it's a bandit village, and shocked, our hero asks, what, this is a bandit village? A sword says that for about 300 years there have been several cities like this, and that it's not small but also not exactly big. Compared to the size of the city, it's quite disorganized, and the security in that area isn't great either. A bit tense about the situation, our hero says he still feels pretty inexperienced. Then Elsid asks where he wants to go, if it's an inn, but our hero says no, that he'll first look for a guild, that it would be better to register as soon as possible while they're not in a rush. And Elsid says he's right, that he did say he wanted to become an adventurer and that a mercenary would work too. But compared to an adventurer, it doesn't seem like he'd have much freedom to move around. He also doesn't intend to get involved in power struggles among nobles, and more importantly, he wants to use the privileges of a hero, believing that taking monster hunting quests would be best, and the sword says it'll still be a long time before its seal is released. Liam thinks that aside from training in the forest, he was able to learn a lot about Elsid because he descended a year earlier than the Oracle had predicted, and that most of Elsid's authority as a sacred sword is sealed. Normally, the wielder of a sacred sword would have a body that recovers quickly, being nearly immortal and also greatly enhanced, as well as being able to use aura and holy energy. And for someone like him who lacks aura to be able to use a sacred sword at full power, he'll need to become stronger. Meanwhile, in the late afternoon at an adventurer's guild, the girl thanks him for registering as an adventurer under the name Leon. She says she confirmed his enrollment at the academy as well as the recommendation letter from Helmet, simple start rank D. Leon asks if she's Rise and asks what rank D means. She explains that it determines the kind of jobs he'll be able to take and that you should be able to rise quickly. She says he'll need to reach rank B to show that he can use an aura weapon and that it'll take some time to get to A or S, and he can't believe aura is a requirement. Besides the level needed to circulate aura, an aura weapon represents the level at which someone can control their aura outside the body, a sword that can break stones and cut through steel. This is the true beginning of a superhuman. He thinks that reaching that level only gets you to rank B and wonders how strong a rank A or S must be. Elsid says this organization is more interesting than he expected, and it looks like there are many humanoid races around. At that moment, our hero notices several people staring at him. Among them, some feline humanoids and others who look like elves. The sword assesses and says there are werewolves, elves, even high elves, and he can't believe they're working with races that were at war 300 years ago. He says the person who created this organization is very skilled. Smiling kindly, Rise asks what's wrong, and our hero stammers a little, saying it's nothing. Then she says it's all good. She says his registration is complete and that if he wants to become an official adventurer, he'll need to complete a mission with no reward at all. Our hero can't believe what he just heard. No reward. In other words, a free job. He asked if it's really without any reward, and she says yes, that he needs to be acknowledged by the guild to become an adventurer. And, of course, you have to pay a price to gain recognition. Alisid says that's how it is. The world isn't always an easy place, while our hero tells him to shut up. It was a beautiful day in that city, and there we have the entrance to the city's sewers. Inside, we see a series of dark tunnels. Someone is running through those underground waters. And facing various monsters, our hero works on his mission. He says it's the first time he's fought rats using a sword. Alisid says his sword techniques are meant for one-on-one combat, and to get through these guys will
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.